So, Dan, what do you want to call this show?
I don't know. I feel like I'm getting poked, so poke the gorilla.
Oh, yeah, you're the gorilla.
Yeah, I'm the gorilla. Yeah. So tell me, Sean, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing well, Dan. How about you?
No, not too bad. What you got your hair on fire today?
Well, we're here in the graveyard, so it seems appropriate that we talk about death.
Should be a lively conversation.
Absolutely. When we talk about what's controversial about death, one of the more controversial things recently, what happens when you die? What recent tax law change? Estate tax, one of the things the recent tax bill tried to do originally was get rid of the estate tax altogether, right?
Yep.
It was walked back a bit, so now it was just raised until I think 2025, something along those lines. I thought it was a good thing. I was kind of against getting rid of the estate tax altogether.
And you know something? I was too, because originally the thought was that the estate tax was to stop the centralization of wealth to a very small group of families.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But you read into this, because I used to believe it. I did some reading. And it seems that the only reason the estate tax still exists is for revenue, because people pop in and out of the 1% almost on a weekly basis. So it's not doing what they originally said they put it in place to do. Okay? So I have a real problem with their focus on generating revenue. Because frankly, the real problem with that estate tax is that it's fueling a big monster. The debt is too high. And by the way, there's some good news on the debt that we'll get to later. But what do you think? I mean, do you really think the estate tax is necessary anymore?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I do.
Of course.
Well, I mean, I know there's this focus on revenue. One of the disagreements we have is, how big the government should be. And, of course, one of my contentions is, well, the government needs to be as big as it needs to be. You know what I mean? And I kind of believe that there's a size at which it needs to be, and it's not going to get smaller than that. And getting rid of it altogether, or to some minimal degree, is not going to support the culture, the society we've created, right? So we need to generate that revenue from somewhere. Yeah. And I actually have to say, in my opinion, who needs it less than people who have died? Well, you say, well, it's not, it's their families. Yeah. Well, I would argue, no, it's not. It was the person that died,
I guess my fundamental problem is these people work for that money. Their family are more entitled to it, in my estimation, than the feds. So what the hell are they doing? They're grabbing what they can, because there's an opportunity to grab some revenue. Let's grab it. And you know something? You're right about the size of government that it needs to be, but there's an argument to be made that government is much bigger than it needs to be, number one. Number two, what about efficiencies in the budget that you can eliminate something like an estate tax, so the people that are in this graveyard, their families, don't get ripped up? Because isn't the debt, let me use the debt for a minute, okay? Because there is growth in that area. The debt under the last administration, forget who it was, under the last administration was growing at an average rate per year of 8.5%. And I remember when they passed this tax law, oh God, the debt's gonna balloon and blah, baloney. You know what's actually happened over the last 2 years? That's estimated out for the second 2 years. The growth in the debt has stunted by half. We're growing only at 4% a year versus 8.5%.
Well, Dan,
I got that from the
Here's what I'm not gonna do with you.
Okay.
I'm not gonna place the system in jeopardy.
Okay.
Because that.
Come on.
It's a tactic that's often used to distract away from the topic at hand. Okay, so I don't care. Honestly.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. I don't care.
I did a lot of research for this. Yeah,
I'm sorry that you wasted your time, Dan. But because ultimately, my point in saying was, look, we do need a certain amount of money to fuel the society we live in, and it's not going to be all privately funded. Again, my opinion, we have a difference of opinion there.
We do disagree on
that. Let's backtrack a little bit more and say I'm not saying I think that there should be some estate tax, but I do think there should be an estate tax exemption.
Okay.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with people wanting to plan their lives in such a way that helps their future generations. I mean, I believe that that's pre-programmed into us.
Yeah.
To take that aspect away from us, it hampers it hampers our natural motivations to achieve things. And I agree. See, where we do agree is I do believe that you don't want to dissuade people from achievement. You know what I mean? I'm not a believer in like pure socialism. I don't think that a pure socialism.
I don't believe in any socialism.
And right, and I do. I believe in a hybrid system.
And I understand that.
So again, that's
but
part
that
of
takes away incentive, similar to what you're talking about.
Right. So,
but that's not a
so I believe there should be some amount of estate tax. Although I don't think that handing. This is me personally. I don't think that handing your heirs. I mean, let's use big numbers, so we're not. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, because that's the thing. What the line is, I don't want to get caught up in what the line is, because everybody can make their argument. I don't think that you should be able to hand your heirs $1 billion. I mean, why?
Okay.
Why should you know? So that means if you can hand your heirs $1 billion, you basically said, well, now none of my ancestors from here on out, as long as our system ever has to work again, is essentially what I believe that says.
The individual, no, you're right. The individual doesn't have to work, but that $1 billion that you're passing on doesn't stop working.
Right, but see, the argument is going to be who will use it best, and your argument's going to be private issue. So again, I think we're getting distracted. We're going down the government line.
Yeah.
And part of the debt thing. I mean, I wanted to kind of bring it back to away from that a little bit and say, listen, I believe in planning for death, and I think creating the right incentives for proper planning for death should remain in place. So estate tax exemption, I think, makes sense. I think no estate tax, I think is not going to benefit us. Now, I don't think we're going to agree on whether that's the case.
But let's talk about one point that we do agree on. And let me share a personal story.
Yeah.
You know, about 3 years ago, my sister passed away. She passed away without an estate plan. She passed away without a will. She passed away, and by the way, it was an absolute Chinese fire drill. Is that politically correct? Anyway, it was an absolute pain in the neck.
This is YouTube, though, so you know.
Yeah, I don't care. Anyway, it was a pain in the neck. It took us 3 years to get her estate settled. It wasn't a small estate, but it wasn't $1 billion.
Right.
But it took us 3 years to get it done. So the one thing that I would think you and I would agree on is that people need to pay attention to that. They need to have things like estate plans in terms of wills, healthcare directives, powers of attorney. They need to have that stuff in place, because what you will do by doing that, if you don't think of anything else, the people that are left behind are not going to pull their hair out at the roots. They'll get something done well.
And I agree completely. I had a similar experience when my grandparents passed away. I mean, really, I think even beyond that, two things. Obviously, getting things set up in an organized manner and communicating with your families.
Yeah, have a conversation.
Having a conversation.
Yeah.
Regardless of, obviously, if you've got $1 billion, then, you've got a problem that I don't see very often.
There's people that are going to want to converse
with you. And
with
our opinions on what should happen with that $1 billion obviously differs. But regardless of if $1 billion or $50,000 or a car or whatever.
Yeah.
You just need to plan for things, talk to your family, make sure the lines of communication are flowing, because we've all experienced situations where people have passed away when they didn't expect to, with an unorganized plan, and ultimately, short of not leaving your family money or whatever, it's a lot of heartache to have to pick up the pieces, for sure.
Yeah, please. What a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
And then my father used to say, money makes the blind man see. So now, without a will, you got siblings and aunts and uncles. Everybody's fighting. If it's a large enough estate, man, you could have fist fights. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's the deal with that, my friend.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a restaurant around here, so we got to get out of here.
Yeah, no. It's probably not an appropriate place to have a picnic, but good place for a conversation.
Cool. Very good. Rock and roll. All right.